everyone. Good day. I'm Wanda Gilbert. I am the division chief here at the Army Substance Abuse Program on Redstone Arsenal, and it is an honor to welcome all of you here to today's forum. Whether you're here in person, we have a small crowd, but I'm hearing we have a huge crowd virtually, and that's awesome. Together, with our shared concerns, it unites us in our effort to get clarity, to hear crucial information, and to have vital discussions that will move us towards finding solutions to combat the threat posed by synthetic opioids and specifically fentanyl. So that is why we are here today. And I just want to encourage each and every one of you, especially those online, those of you who are here in person, I want you to jump into the conversation. I want you to participate. I want you to ask questions of these experts. We have an awesome expert panel up here. We want you to have a positive experience here where you feel informed and feel empowered. And with that empowerment, together we can have a more positive impact on our communities and safeguarding ourselves, our families, our workforces, right? Each other. We are here to uplift each other. So thank you for being here. And at this time, we will have the invocation by Deputy Garrison Chaplain Major Hicks, followed by a brief introduction of the Partnership for a Drug-Free Community and our guest panelist by Ms. Michelle Borman, who is our prevention coordinator here at the Army Substance Abuse Program. Thank you.
Let us pray together. Father God, we thank you for this day you've made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Father, as we gather to talk about the dangers of fentanyl, may we discuss solutions, may we find solutions, may your will be done. May you protect the Redstone Arsenal community from the dangers that are out there with this fentanyl, and may we have a solid plan in place in order to defeat this horrible drug. And we pray this in your name, Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Hicks. My name is Michelle Borman, and I'm the Prevention Coordinator with the Army Substance Abuse Program. I'm very excited for today's event. We've been planning it. We had to cancel it and reschedule it, so I'm so glad that you've turned out. We're honored to have various experts here with us who are members and friends of the Partnership for a Drug-Free Community, a nonprofit organization that serves as a hub for the recovery resources, treatment referrals, community outreach, and the ASAM assessments for state-funded treatment programs in the state of Alabama. In addition, we have the Substance Use Disorder Clinical Care Director with Fox Army Health Center. Together, our panelists bring diverse perspectives, professional insight, and shared commitment to combating the opioid crisis. Let us warmly welcome them and prepare ourselves for an informative discussion that will undoubtedly be a catalyst for you to take on a greater role in moving our community into a safer and healthier future. I'd like to thank you all for joining us again. And I'd like to give a warm welcoming round of applause to our panelists for joining us here today. So the PowerPoint behind the panelists will list some of our housekeeping notes. Please follow them to sign in and fill out the surveys at the end. Surveys are really important. They let us know how we're doing and what we can do in the future to change things if we need to. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wilkerson to get us started. Thank you, Carl.
Good afternoon. My name is Carl Wilkerson. I currently serve as the Recovery Services Director for Partnership for a Drug-Free Community. I am a licensed counselor as well as an advanced addictions professional. Today we're going to have an opportunity to hear some very, very important information from our panel. I don't think we could have put together a more experienced panel than we have, but we will begin today with a brief introduction. Starting at my left, we have to my left Ms. Karen Krausen, Board President, Partnership for a Drug-Free Community. Is also she served as the Director of Pharmacy, currently retired. Immediately to her left, we have Don Webster, Community Relations Officer, Huntsville Emergency Management Incorporated. Dr. Daniel Newberger, Medical Director, Huntsville Hospital Emergency Department. Dr. Tyler Berryhill, Madison County Coroner. And we have Ms. Ryan Yanko, licensed professional counselor, director of substance use disorder clinical care program for Fox Army Health Center. To begin, our panelists will give you a brief presentation, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. Once we conclude those presentations, we will have the opportunity for question and answer from our audience as well as those that are joining us online. All right, so we will immediately get started with Ms. Krausen.
Thank you. I'm a retired hospital pharmacist. In the 20-plus years I was at Huntsville Hospital, we dispensed a lot of fentanyl. It's an excellent drug as an anesthetic in surgery and for the treatment of cancer pain. So how did a drug that was made in a lab in 1960 create an overdose epidemic 20 years later? Well, we're going to explore that question and see if we can come up with some answers. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. When it was created, it was the most potent opioid in the world, 100 times more potent than morphine and 30 to 50 times more potent than heroin. In 1968, it made its way to the market. It was used just strictly for anesthesia and surgery. Then by the 1980s, other formulations started coming on the market, the lozenges, the transdermal patches, and these were marketed for cancer pain. Well, by 2000, the drug companies got just a little bit greedy. Can you imagine that? They had their sales reps to start marketing it off-label. They would go into physicians' offices and tell them that it could be used for all kinds of pain, migraines, back pain, etc. By 2015, there were over 6 million prescriptions written for fentanyl. On the illegal side, in 1979 was when we first started seeing a few overdoses from illegal fentanyl. Things really picked up in 2013. There was an increase of supply of precursors coming out of China, going to Mexico to make the fentanyl. And that's how we got to where we are now. In 2022, there were 107,000 overdose deaths. 70% of those, or 73,000, were associated with fentanyl. Next slide, please. So how did it get so bad? Well, 3 of the major reasons are it's easy to make, it's cheap to make, and it has a huge profit margin. In contrast to harvesting a crop to make morphine, heroin, oxycodone, codeine, all of those are derived from the opium poppy. You have to plant a crop, you have to nurture it, and then you have to harvest it. In contrast, fentanyl is made in a lab from precursors. Instructions for making fentanyl are readily available on the dark web, along with access to the precursors, the lab equipment, and the pill presses to make the fake pills. You'll be surprised at how much profit there is in this drug. Kilogram of fentanyl can be purchased for $5,000. Then that can be turned into 500,000 fake pills, netting a profit of $1.5 million. By contrast, heroin is about $6,000 per kilogram, and it nets a profit of roughly $80,000. So you see why all the drug dealers have gravitated to fentanyl. It takes just a little bit of fentanyl to get high, and it takes just a little bit more to kill you. The graphic up here shows you how much fentanyl is a lethal dose. 2 milligrams of fentanyl is a lethal dose. That's compared to the size of a penny. To put that in perspective, 1/8 of a teaspoon of sugar is 438 milligrams. If that were fentanyl, it would kill 219 people. We're going to see a clip on how the illegal labs work. You know, as a pharmacist, I thought maybe a seedy warehouse somewhere, guys in at least lab coats. When you see this, I think you'll be as horrified as I was. Could you show the clip?
Illicit use of the synthetic opioid painkiller has ravaged the United States, and Mexican drug cartels now see huge profits in an addicted market for the drug. With the support of the Pulitzer Center from Sinaloa State in Mexico, special correspondent Monica Villamizar and videographer Zach Fannin report.
A handful of dirt is thrown into the wind to gauge the way it's blowing. It's important work because one gust in the wrong direction and any mistake in this delicate process could lead to death.
Your life is at stake. An experienced cook knows to look at the direction of the wind and to turn around when the wind turns, and he knows that this is vital. There are people who get sick. This process starts very toxic, but the toxicity fades. An expert knows towards the end you can get close to the pot. If the toxicity was high at that point, you could not even get near to empty the pot. That is when the black goat is made.
Heroin is usually called black goat, but these drug makers are not using poppy plants as the raw materials. Instead, they start with this synthetic powder, which is cooked over an open flame. The drug is called fentanyl, and we're at the heart of the industry, inside the western Mexican state of Sinaloa.
We've been given rare access to one of the Sinaloa cartel's fentanyl labs. It's quite ingenious because they've set it up in the middle of those cows. And because there's so many police operations right now in the area, the cows provide a perfect cover. Now, we've been advised to wear a respirator and goggles because fentanyl is very, very toxic. And many of these cooks have died just by inhaling it.
These cooks work without protective equipment, and they believe in a myth here that drinking beer will disable the high that comes along with being close to the heated substance. This man, who we are calling Pedro, is one of the first links in a chain that sends fentanyl from Mexico to the United States. This package of fentanyl, which is sold as a competitor to heroin, weighs 11 pounds and sells for $15,000 in Sinaloa's capital, Culiacan. The further the product travels, the more valuable it gets. By the time it arrives in America, 11 pounds could sell for $100,000. Fentanyl has proven to be a diabolical game changer for the cartels. It's inexpensive. It can be mixed into drugs like cocaine, methamphetamine, and other opiates.
Right now, as fentanyl is stronger than anything, a little fentanyl could make 11 pounds of black goat, and it is stronger than the poppy flower. That's why people gave up on heroin. It's way cheaper with fentanyl.
So many people in America are dying of fentanyl overdose. So do you feel somehow responsible since what they're consuming is made here?
Well, it is something that one who consumes decides on his own. Drugs are bad and addictive. Consumers are aware that the effect doesn't last long, but they cannot go without it. Although they know that it is wrong, it is addictive.
Have you had any of your friends die making it?
So many died for a few pesos. We all like money. There are people who aspire to have better things, But the big money is not made by us. It's made by others. Many workers have no other job. It's a hustle.
Many in the region are self-taught chemists working in a low-tech, multi-million-dollar operation. These men used to be farmers until their home state became the stronghold of the powerful Sinaloa cartel, once run by this man, Joaquin Guzman, nicknamed El Chapo. He's now serving a life sentence in an American prison. Writer Joan Grillo explains that fentanyl and synthetics are easier to produce than crop-based drugs like heroin or cocaine.
You don't have to care about protecting those from military. You just buy some precursors, you mix it up in a lab, and you've got your drug. So the profit margins are massive on synthetic drugs. Also, you can do this anywhere. So this has really changed the geography of organized crime as well. We can find labs all over the country. You can see labs for synthetic drugs on the outskirts of Mexico City. You can see labs right on the border with the United States.
Sinaloa is also home to narcos that manufacture fentanyl pills inside homemade labs that are run by chemists like this man. He says he's always alert, as too much exposure to fentanyl, even in pill form, can be deadly. The chemist says he makes 150,000 pills on a good day, which are worth about $90,000 in Sinaloa. The same pills can fetch about 10 or 20 times that price when they hit the streets of America. The pills are marked M30, M20, and M10.
M30 carries 30 milligrams of fentanyl. The other has 10 milligrams. Some inferior pills aren't clearly marked, but these are the good ones, the M30.
A few years back, he made Oxycontin pills, another opioid painkiller. But today he only makes fentanyl, which is much stronger and deadlier.
Got that wrong about the amount of fentanyl. If he was putting 30 milligrams in those and 2 milligrams, it's a lethal dose, he was way off. Last year, when the DEA assayed all of the confiscated fake Oxycontin pills, 6 out of 10 had a lethal dose of fentanyl in them. So folks buying fake pills on the street have a 60% chance of dying taking one pill. And if you'll notice, the fake ones actually look a little bit better than the real ones. Next slide. But wait, there's more. Carfentanil is a large animal tranquilizer. It's 10,000 times more potent than morphine. It's made its way into the illegal drug market as well. 2 little grains of salt would be enough to kill a human. And if that's not enough, recently 2 new substances are increasingly being mixed with fentanyl or heroin. The first is a class of drugs called nitazines. They were synthesized in the 1950s. It's a synthetic opioid, but the FDA would not approve it because it was too toxic. But the recipes for making it are still out there in some of the literature. So now it's being made illegally and being added to these drugs. It's cheaper to make than fentanyl, and depending on the formulation, it can be anywhere between 2 and 10 times more potent than fentanyl. The second drug is not an opioid, it's xylazine. The street name is Trang. And it is added to fentanyl to make the euphoria last longer. It is a veterinarian drug. It's used to sedate animals. It is not for human use, and when humans use it, one of the major side effects is skin lesions resulting in skin infections, muscle infections, and eventually bone infections. Next slide. It's a pretty bleak picture with fentanyl, but there are some things we can do to reduce the harm associated with using drugs. The first is to have Narcan generically known as naloxone, available. It will be in stores over the counter either by the end of this week or for sure by next week. I called a Walgreens this morning before the presentation to see if they were stocking it yet. They said they had not got it in. I said, well, you don't have any idea of what you're going to charge, do you? And she said it's probably going to be about $40. We're assuming it will be the 2-pack, so that's 2 doses of Narcan for roughly $40, $44, somewhere in that range. On these other drugs, other than fentanyl and some of the fentanyl, you're going to have to use multiple doses of Narcan to revive the person, to reverse the opioid. Now, it will not reverse xylazine, it will not reverse methamphetamine or cocaine, but if you don't know what the person has had, it does not hurt to give the Narcan. It will not hurt them. So definitely use the Narcan. Partnership also has fentanyl test strips, and just recently xylazine test strips became available. So we are now stocking those as well. That can be used to test multiple drugs, methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, any drug, to see if it has, with the 2 different strips, to see if it has these components in it, and you can use it on pill forms, powders, or injectables. So again, partnership can assist individuals that are needing to obtain the fentanyl test strips or the xylazine test strips. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Don Webster, Community Relations Officer.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. Mine's going to be kind of short, but basically, Hempsey Ambulance Service, we cover the entire Huntsville, Madison County area, along with the annexed areas over in Limestone and in Morgan County to the south of our Whitesburg Bridge area. Just to give you an idea, we respond to about 242 calls every 24 hours in our service area. Out of that, we transport about 174 patients every 24-hour day. I see this gentleman here going, wow. We're very busy. Our little city has grown, and we stay busy. Now, that's emergency calls as well as non-emergency calls. That's transporting patients from dialysis to nursing homes and everything, but it's still a lot of calls. I've been here for many, many years, started in 1973, so I have watched it grown over as with the growth. People don't realize we do keep an ambulance out here on Redstone Arsenal every day, Monday through Friday, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then we have some ambulances out here for some other special operation things from time to time. So we work very closely with Redstone Arsenal and the different branches. As far as the overdoses, I'll save the drama and tell you, in 2022, last year, we averaged 909 overdoses from fentanyl and opioid type drugs overdoses in 1 year. That was 909 that year, which breaks down to 75 a month or 2.5 patients per day that overdose on opioid and or fentanyl drugs. This year, thus far, from January to June, I broke it down, I just did the 6 months, 486 so far this year that we've had, which is 81 a month, which averages 2.7 overdoses a day. So we are seeing the number go up. Now, I will go back and tell you and regress. In 2021, we actually saw just a little dip. I don't know where that was during the pandemic time. We're not for sure what was going on. People weren't working, didn't have the money. I don't know. Do not know the answers, but we did have a little dip in 2021. But the numbers have gone up this year. And so that is alarming. It's a concern. You know, a lot of questions. Why? Is our population, because we have more people that we're dealing, you know, in Madison County. So those are some of the issues that we look at every day. But we respond in to these fentanyl overdoses. I guess if there's a shiny side to it, as Karen was referring to, and that we can get these patients back. There is a strong chance, if we can get to them in a short enough period of time, that these patients can be reversed with the naloxone, the Narcan, and we can get them back breathing and keep their heart going. So it is a good chance as compared to some of the other drugs that we have had to deal with. So that is just our little report, and so this is something that we are concerned. And it is, we work with our law enforcement. We work with Dr. Newberger and the Huntsville Hospital and Crestwood Hospital organizations very closely. But one thing that we have noticed when the overdoses start, they'll come in a rash of them. We'll have 2 or 3 in a day. 2 or 3 maybe the next day, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 the next day, and then we'll go back and plateau and maybe not have any. I hate to say it, but we use it as probably a bad analogy, but it is, we think we're getting a shipment of bad dope as compared to good dope, if that makes sense. In other words, these pills that we saw being made, you know, it's not like when you make a cake and you stir all the flour and the sugar and the powder and everything, you stir it up real good and blend it up, it's good. They don't take the time to mix it well, so what happens is you get little deposits of fentanyl in there, maybe 4 little granulas where it should be only 2, and that's what we see is that people get a hold of the bad pill or a bad injection or something that is not well, and then it puts them into respiratory rest and they have an overdose. So anyway, we'll be here for questions, so I'm going to turn it over to Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Newberger.
Hey, so I'm the medical director of the main ER at Huntsville Hospital. I'm going to go through a couple different things, some maybe not so encouraging statistics, some positive, somewhat recent developments, and then what we're seeing in the ER. Just some quick stats. So the Alabama Department of Public Health publishes how many fentanyl-related deaths, and this is probably a gross underestimation, but year by year. And so in 2018, it was 121. In 2019, it was 193. In 2020, it was 428. 2021, it was 830, and in 2022, it was 835. So there's a pretty clear trend in the upward direction, although maybe plateauing a little bit. So that's really concerning. The DEA in 2022 confiscated almost 58 million fentanyl-laced pills and over 13,000 pounds of fentanyl powder. We touch a little bit about xylazine because it's probably an emerging threat. And the big concern we have about xylazine being in kind of drug supply is that there's not a rapid reversal agent. So as Don was saying, you know, if you get to a fentanyl overdose who's still breathing, you've got a decent shot of getting them back, but we don't have a rapid reversal agent for xylazine. But we're seeing more and more of this. Apparently, nationwide, it's laced in about 23% of powders and 7% of pills. But I was reading an article earlier today, actually, that they're sampling recoveries at needle exchange sites in Baltimore, and they're seeing over 80% positive for xylazine. So it's definitely kind of of people who think that they're using fentanyl or other opioids. About 80% of what they're using actually contains xylazine. So some scary stuff, maybe some positive things. So kind of from a therapy standpoint, I think there's kind of more and more funding, more and more motivation to get involved in that. The requirement for prescribers to have an X waiver, which was essentially a hoop to jump through to try to prescribe medications that are used for treating substance use disorders, was repealed in January of this year. And so whereas any prescriber with a DEA license could prescribe Percocet or Norcos a year ago, you couldn't prescribe things like Suboxone or buprenorphine without getting an X waiver, and the vast majority of people just didn't get X waivers, right? Because it was a hoop to jump through. You no longer have to have an X waiver, which is a positive step. And there is increasing requirements for substance abuse education for anybody applying for or renewing a DEA license. So any prescriber who wants to prescribe Schedule 2 through 5 narcotics has to now do 8 hours of specific CME for substance abuse disorders, which that didn't used to be the case, so it's a positive. Availability of fentanyl test strips, I think, is a real positive thing. And, as one of those things, it's not legal everywhere. It is legal in our state, which is good. And then availability of Narcan, it's behind the counter. It's, over the counter now, but not available, as you were saying, but behind the counter, so you can walk into a pharmacy and, talk to the pharmacist about wanting to buy Narcan. It's still $50 to $60, even with like a good RX coupon. That's kind of the going price for it. And then UDSs specifically popping positive for fentanyl. Even 5 years ago, I don't think our standard urine drug screen included fentanyl, and now it does, so easier testing. So now kind of to what we're seeing in the ER. And our numbers line up pretty well with MC's, which makes sense, but it's about 1.5% of our ER visits are related to adverse effects or poisoning from opioids. So it's not the majority of the people we're seeing, but it's a decent burden, and it does definitely come in waves. I was talking with Dawn earlier. My last shift in the ER yesterday, right? I saw 18 to 20 patients. I had 3 fentanyl overdoses on shift, and the interesting thing about this is compared to a lot of other drugs, I think, is that there's not your standard patient for this. So my 3 patients were somebody from out of state, who traveled to see a girl. I had a patient from jail, and I had a teenager who is still living with their parents. And so these are literally runs the gamut of society, which is just tells you the burden that exists. And these people I think fall into 2 categories. Either they're people who are using and know they're using but use too much, or haven't used in a period of time, so don't have the tolerance that they think they had. Or they're people who think that they're using another drug. So people who think that they're taking a Xanax pill or a Percocet, and really it has fentanyl in it. And they're buying it from their buddy or that type of thing. And so it's definitely a problem in affecting our community, and unfortunately things seem to be getting a little worse rather than better. But I'm glad that there's some motivation and community involvement to hopefully get things headed in the right direction.
Thank you, Dr. Newberry. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Tyler Berryhill.
I'm Dr. Tyler Berryhill. I'm the coroner here in Madison County. As a coroner, we're responsible for investigating any sudden, violent, unexpected deaths, those deaths which are not under the attendance of a physician at the time or licensed medical care, or any case, regardless of where the death occurs at, if it may be criminal in nature. And when we talk about fentanyl and we think about the impact that it has on our community, I would say that probably 90% of everybody in this room knows somebody that's fought some type of addiction in the past, whether it be a family member or a friend. So it's something that touches all walks of life. Now, Don had mentioned where about 2.5, Don, times a day we have an overdose. Well, every 72 hours in Madison County, somebody dies from that overdose. To put in perspective, to date, we've had 54 confirmed drug-related deaths occurred in our jurisdiction. I still have 34 more cases that are pending, awaiting toxicology results to be sent back. That way we can get a confirmation to pinpoint exactly what drug it was. But 80% of those will involve the drug known as fentanyl that we're here today talking about. Whether people know that they're obtaining it, whether they have no idea, or they think they're using the safe amount that they have before. It's something that it just day in, day out we see over and over. We talk about Xanax. A lot of people, they have an addiction to it. Well, there's pill presses out there now, and we see it on scene. We're investigating the scene, we're examining the body, or we're going through the personal effects that's on them, and we see the pills that look just like it. But when they're tested, it comes back as fentanyl. They're counterfeit, but they have no idea. We talk about carfentanil, that very powerful version. In the past 6 months, we have had one confirmed case of it. We just had one case of the xylazine in the past 6 months. And that's one of the areas that we continually look at to see, do we have new and emerging drug threats that are coming into the area? But the reality is, day in, day out, over the past 3 to 4 years, it's been fentanyl as the #1 culprit, day in, day out. And it's really heartbreaking to see it in the way it tears families apart. When we get the call, we respond out to the scene to conduct the death investigation, because we've got to figure out what's happened here under these circumstances. We have to tell who this has happened to and how did this come about, because everybody has a story to tell. And in these circumstances, we have to get as many answers as possible for the family, for the criminal justice system. That way we can try to have some type of accountability, if at all possible, to combat the drugs that are affecting our streets that we have here so rampant. The most common uses that we typically do see is snorting the drug. I can't tell you the number of scenes that we go on each month where we find the straws that are cut lying there next to the bodies. That's just a grim reality of it. We still see people that will smoke the drug, and we still see IV drug use. Typically once to twice a month, I'll go to a scene and still have to remove the tourniquet from the arm, and the needle will be laying there between their feet. It's a grim reality, but it's something that hits us hard, and I'm so thankful to have everybody here in this panel, in this community here, for us to try to fight back as much as we can. And with it, one of the other things that kind of gets overlooked when we talk about fentanyl is the criminal aspect of it is just outrageous. I see it from my perspective as coroner conducting the death investigations, and particularly the homicides. In many of these cases, there's limited details that are put out in the beginning, and rightfully so. It's an ongoing investigation. You don't want to put too much out there because you have witnesses calling in, giving tips, and you want to be able to vet what's true, what's not true. But the overwhelming number of homicides and the shootings that you see on TV and the news comes back to drugs or drug-related. So it's a problem that affects every mainstream that we have here in our community. And that's just something that we all have to band together to continue to fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Berryhill. Next, we'll hear from Ryan Yanko.
Thank you. So what happens if an individual does have a substance use disorder, and they will come for clinical care if they're able to. And so we will assess for a level of care, see if there's a medical detox that is needed, and assess for if they are able to go to residential inpatient treatment, if they need intensive outpatient or outpatient therapy. We offer outpatient, individual, group, family sessions, and also there's medicated assisted treatment for harm reduction for these individuals. There's Suboxone and Sublocade. There's naltrexone and Vivitrol, and methadone are all medicated assisted treatments for substance use disorders. And so some of the things that we're looking for is what level of care is this individual willing to participate in. And so we try to match that up with the need and the willingness to participate. And so we look for what stage of change is that individual in. Are they ready to change? And do they have internal or external motivation? We try to motivate them to move along those stages of change. We look at the needs of that individual. There's physiological, safety, love and belonging, self-esteem, and self-actualization. We work towards relapse prevention, help them identify triggers, the emotions, people, places, things, smells, music that all trigger that urge to use. What high-risk situations are they in environmentally? And we look at their strengths. What do they have that's working for them that they can use? I also, in my practice, I like to use accelerated resolution therapy. It's an image replacement, and I found that to be very helpful as well. We like to link with 12-step groups for that community support, build the sober peer support network, help them identify leisure activities that they once enjoyed that they gave up in using, and help them get reacclimated to that and enjoying those things again. And most importantly, just helping them recognize that they don't have to do it all at once. It's one day at a time and doing the next right thing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shenko. I'd like to extend an appreciation to all of our panelists. Wonderful information that you provided to us today. At this opportunity, we will be taking questions from the audience as well as those who are tuning in with us virtually. I will encourage you to ask as many questions as you need to get the information that you need. There is no such thing as a dumb question. There is no such thing as an ignorant question. Most of the time, the answers that we need in order to be successful at combating this problem, sometimes and oftentimes it's right amongst us in this room. So we have a wonderful opportunity today to be able to engage with our panelists, and I encourage you to do so. So with that said, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them at this time.
We have one back here.
Yes, you may have covered it, but I must have missed it. How prolific is this within the Huntsville, Madison County community?
How prevalent, yeah.
Well, as I said, we had 468 so far this year, the first 6 months, and we are seeing an increase in the trend of pre-hospital overdoses.
Yeah, and these are the ones we're seeing, right? So, there are a lot of people who use who we don't see.
Yeah,
right? So it's extremely, so like I said, it's 1.5% of our volume in our ER. So we see, 230, 240 patients a day, and 1.5% of these patients are there for opioid overdoses. But, there's their friends, their buddies. There's a lot of people using in addition to those who we're seeing, of course.
It's not a script, and the law enforcement agencies, which they're not here today with us, but they keep a gauge on it as far as the utilization. But if you think about it, the ones that we are talking about, especially the three of us, the coroner, the physician, and the pre-hospital paramedic, those are the ones that aren't doing well. They've had a bad day, if you will. Just think of all the ones that are doing it every day and not have any issues with it. I promise you, the person that has an addiction didn't wake up this morning and say, I think I'm going to take an overdose and die today. They don't do that. They just want to get high. They just want to feed their habit, their craving to stay high. That's what they want to do.
These people are using multiple times a day, because otherwise they'd be in Florida withdrawals. So your average user is using more than once a day. So 2 to 3 times a day is,
We have literally had cases where we had the same person overdose twice in one day, one morning and one later that evening. Unfortunate that evening they wouldn't past being able to be resuscitated in the emergency room. So.
And of the 54 confirmed overdoses that we have, as we all sit here today, over 40 of those fentanyl was involved in. So.
Somebody from Microsoft Teams. So Carolyn's going to go ahead and ask you that question, and then we'll go back to the audience.
Will we get this one first?
Hi, this hit me personally because I lost my son in 2019 from fentanyl. My question to you guys is, and he was in and out of rehab, several locations around the state. What is the statistical success rate, I guess, for those people going through rehab when it comes to methamphetamines, opioids, and fentanyl and those issues?
I don't have a great answer for you. What I'd say is it's something that it's a lifelong disease for these people, right? So it's people will relapse and they'll come back, and there has to be motivation to get into rehab to begin with, which is a big step for people. I mean, your family can be wanting you to do something, and it comes down to the patient. But yeah, there are obviously people who relapse multiple times.
What I found personally is that the rehabilitation centers weren't very successful in my case, and from my understanding, it provided my son with more contacts for potential drug use later on. He was out of rehab in August and perished in November of 2019, and that was not the first rehab facility he's been to, and it's also a burden on the family because they can reject treatment for being admitted into rehab at the age of 14.
Right.
And I had that case where I had to manipulate my son because he was not going to go to rehab. I said, well, son, if you don't go, then the cops are going to have to take you because I can't take responsibility for your actions because the parents are powerless. And it really is a shame because we're responsible for these young people when they grow. So it's a burden. It was hard, and it still is.
Yeah, I agree.
I would like to interject something there. I don't think there is a number correctly that denotes to the success rate of treatment, but I know 15 to 20 years ago there was a study that said anywhere at any given time a person involved in substance abuse treatment, usually there's if you have a group of anywhere from 18 to 20 people, maybe 1 in 18 of those people are going to achieve sobriety and maintain that sobriety throughout a lifetime. So when we talk about addiction in regards to success rate, we can't measure success in whether or not the person stays sober for the rest of their lives. It is a chronic relapsing disease, so we can expect anyone that's seeking treatment and or trying to become sober, we can expect them to have multiple slip-ups, over a period of time like we would any illness or any disease. So secondary to that is that treatment, usually you'll see it advertised somewhere 30 to 90 days or so. Having been a treatment professional myself in the past, I can tell you right now, 90 days is not enough time to address a lifelong issue. So usually we're looking at somewhere for success rates to be more prolonged. We're looking for anywhere from a year to a year and a half of treatment for some form of therapeutic intervention to take hold so that person can maintain sobriety over a long period of time. It saddens me to hear about your son, and I do understand the hurdles that you go through as a parent dealing with a minor. Although the treatments for addiction are typically the same for kids as well as adults, but there is a different dynamic when it comes to dealing with adolescents and going into substance abuse treatment. But just to the audience, this isn't a one-shot deal, so it takes, multiple rounds of treatment sometimes for people to achieve the desired result, which is sobriety. And I think we had a question from Microsoft Teams.
All right, can everyone hear me? All right. Are there any situations where the bad drugs got mixed in with the good drugs, like at pharmacies or hospitals?
No. The bad drugs are counterfeit. They're not coming through the legal drug manufacturer chain through the warehouses and then to the pharmacies and the hospital.
All right. Ready. Are there any Good Samaritan laws in place to protect bystanders who intervene in an overdose?
Yeah, I mean, the Good Samaritan Act, the Good Samaritan Law is covered. I mean, basically states as long as anybody's not receiving any salary, gifts, or compensation for assisting to administer naloxone, Narcan, CPR, or anything like that, that they are immune from any liability.
Okay, the next question is, what more may practitioners do to intervene before potential victims interact or become a victim of with fentanyl?
I can address from the pre-hospital, from the, you know, it's one thing that we have found, and this is not just me personally, but a lot of times when people, and I think Carl and David and some of them can attest to it that work with the people that have addictive behaviors, they don't want to go just totally solitaire, and what we have found, cars are a big place for people to take opioids and fentanyl. They like to be in their cars. And I always wondered why we have so many pre-hospital overdoses that are in cars. And they explained it to me. One, they can turn up their music, play their music. Two, they can control their temperature of the car. They turn the heater on or the air, usually the heater, but they turn the heater on. And they're secluded to some degree, but if something goes wrong, somebody may very well see them slumped over or laid over, or they can hit the horn, sit down on the horn. And it made sense to me. I'm a slow learner, but it made sense to me that, and that's why we see so many, and they're out in the parking lots. But to answer your question, I think that, you know, first and foremost, activate the 911 system. Call 911. If in doubt, call 911. You know, and then first responders, be it the police, EMS, or fire service, will get there and take over. But if you can get to the person, hopefully you know CPR, and you know, just to establish the level of the responsiveness. If they're not responding, check their breathing. If not, start, you know, if you can, if you have some kind of face shield or you know, pocket mask or something, you can do artificial. Check for circulation. If their heart's not beating, just start fast and hard on doing chest compressions.
I guess I'd say, you know, so I've been doing this 11 years. And it used to be, I mean, it was always an issue. We'd get heroin overdoses. When I was a resident, we'd give them Narcan and say, see ya, type of thing. I think, and tell them, hey, don't use, right? I think my mindset has shifted a fair bit from that, in that, you know, people who are addicts are going to use. So I've taken to counseling patients, not only on resources that are available to help with hopefully achieving sobriety, but also talking with them about things like, you know, not using alone when they're going to use, taking test doses of what they're going to use if they get new product, and things like that. And also just the availability of Narcan, and everybody who comes in who's seen by me, who gets prescribed an opioid or comes in for an overdose gets a prescription for Narcan. I know they don't need it, but to get the medication, but they get a prescription for Narcan as well. So.
Okay, so next question, and we're going to combine two of them here. This is looking at demographically, is there a specific age group that you're saying with fentanyl users and casualties?
My perspective as the coroner, most of our deaths typically will be somewhere between the 18 to 35 years old range. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have people before that range and after, but the vast demographics that we see our deaths typically fall in there.
I'd agree. Late teens to mid to upper 30s is the majority of patients.
For following up to that, looking at the schools, there's a couple questions about, wondering what can be done with the schools in order to share awareness within the school systems, and any information or links that y'all might have to help inform our youth on this horrible reality.
Let you answer that one.
Typically, I think, schools can do a benefit by doubling down on education. The information is out there. Just packaging it in a way that is age appropriate and specific to, that child's, demographic area or whatnot. Usually, depending on the state that you're in, most states have a regulatory agency, mental health centers or whatnot. A lot of times those, state-funded centers or mental health centers usually have substance use treatment components to them. It's very easy to contact those agencies to get information and or education. A lot of those agencies also have alcohol and drug prevention programs. And usually that's what they specialize in, being able to disseminate information to age-specific groups and whatnot. So the resources are out there. It's just being able to find them that tends to be, problematic sometimes, but they're there.
All right, thank you. And another question we have is just for confirmation that y'all are speaking about trends to Alabama. And the question really is, what are you saying across the U.S.? We do have people joining us from different installations and locations throughout the country.
I think things are regional, obviously, and there's definitely, hot zone pockets, and we probably have it a little bit better than the majority of the country, which is nice. But it's a problem everywhere. It's just to what degree.
We agree. From communicating with other EMS first responder agencies, they all, some have it worse and some have it better, but it's still a nationwide issue.
And I think we had a question down front.
Wow.
Of the illegal drugs, what more do you think needs to happen to keep the drugs from coming into our communities?
I'm not the law.
Legislators.
Yeah, legislators, laws, and law enforcement. There was an article this morning I was telling Karen on AL.com that was about the drugs, the products made in China, the chemical compounds made in China. It makes its way to, to Mexico, and then the drugs are manufactured and then smuggled into the United States. But it's just unreal of all that goes on there, and talking about how the law enforcement and DEA, FBI, and all these, how they try to monitor it and keep up with the cartels. It's just it's all about money, and so it's a sad situation. And it's really hurting our population and the people in our country. And so it's very sad, and I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that it is becoming a nationwide issue where people are really focusing on it. I mean, we've all focused on it over the years, but I think it's now almost like the pandemic. I mean, it is a major issue that is killing more and more of our young people, and we've got to do something about it to stop it.
Mic check.
Yes, I'd like to direct my question to Ms. Croson. Ma'am, when you were explaining about, I guess the first piece of it was the manufacturing of it, basically coming from China and Mexico, is there any evidence that this, since it's so simple, and it tends to be something that can be very well disguised, is this something that we've ever seen or are seeing or potentially could see being manufactured right here in our own state?
I'm sure that possibility would exist when you're looking at $1.5 million in profits. People will do some pretty stupid things. You know, it is so toxic when they're making it. They gotta be able to have a laminar flow hood or something, or respirator. Down in Mexico, they didn't really seem to care. So it's quite dangerous to make, but for $1.5 million, people will try.
Okay. My second question was in regards to the Narcan. Did I understand you correctly? You said even if you don't know what the overdose is, you can use it on anyone.
Correct.
There's no
it will not
side
hurt
effect
them.
or back.
If it appears there might be an overdose, but you don't know for sure, it's okay to go ahead and administer the Narcan. It won't hurt them.
You give Narcan to Don right now, and it's not going to hurt him, right?
Okay.
So, assuming he is not on any prescription medications I don't know about, but yeah, it's not. You're not going to harm somebody by giving.
It's almost in the pre-hospital. It's almost like taking the blood pressure. If they're unconscious or unresponsive, they're going to get some Narcan because it'll save them if they've got any kind of opioids in there. If they don't, it's going to be absorbed. So, but I wanted to say one thing about your making the manufacturing of drugs here. Unfortunately, we do manufacture a lot of drugs here in Alabama, and it's called meth. And, you know, now there are cases when fentanyl does get sprinkled in with the meth, which is just as bad. But yes, there's a lot of methamphetamines that are manufactured in, you know, in Alabama. Not just in Alabama, but we are well known, and it does become a problem. You know, you can remember they used to call it the shake and bake. They'd, you know, mix it up in a 2-liter Coke bottle and put it in the trunk and ride around with it. And you know, it's dangerous as well. I mean, you know, stuff explodes and catches on fire and various different things because it's got a lot of toxic chemicals to it.
Thank you for that. So when it comes down to the Narcan and getting it over the counter, is this something that, I know it hasn't come out yet, but is this something that there'll be a limit to what you can get as far as 2 boxes, 3 boxes? Is there any question a person comes in and asks for a box of this that they're like wondering why do you need it, or do you know somebody, or you're unauthorizedly, you know, distributing this?
The goal is to get it out there as many places to as many people as possible. You know, it needs to be in schools, it needs to be in nightclubs, it needs to be anywhere that there's a potential for somebody overdosing. Libraries see a fair amount of overdoses.
Okay, thank you for that. I actually have several questions. I had one for you, Mr. Webster, but it was answered already, so I'll go to my next one, which was to Dr. Berryhill. Scientifically, I know you do the toxicology reports and things like that. What exactly is the fentanyl, what is it doing once it's inhaled or it's intravenously taken, what is it attacking? Is it the respiratory? Is it the brain? And how does it literally work to be that lethal?
With it, it's going to induce respiratory distress and failure. That's the mechanism how that drug particularly kills, as well as all opioids, versus cocaine and methamphetamine, which typically can cause abnormal heart rhythms, heart attacks, and strokes. Fentanyl and opioids depress breathing, and that's how it causes the body to fail. Now, when we think about it from a forensics perspective, physically, at examination or if an autopsy is performed, we'll see pulmonary edema, or fluid will pull inside the lungs associated with the lungs failing. Oftentimes, we'll see cerebral edema, where the brain's going to swell a little bit. But there's other things that can cause that too. So the toxicology is what truly tells the tale for these drugs, because those drugs causes a mechanical reaction in the body, which respiratory failure is a mechanical reaction. So that allows us to interpret what triggered these events here today. And where Don had mentioned methamphetamine, that's the #1 co-use that I see in toxicology. If there's any other drugs present besides just fentanyl alone, the #1 co-use is going to be fentanyl and methamphetamine, followed by fentanyl and cocaine, used in the speedball technique.
Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
My next question, I guess, is to the panel. And I guess directly I'm asking, how do we protect ourselves from it? I happened to see a video. My son's in law enforcement, and I've gotten involved with the fire department in Monrovia, and one of the things we've talked about, the fentanyl is a big discussion, obviously. How do you protect yourself against it? I saw a video of a police officer pulling over a car. He opens the trunk, looks in it, and next thing you notice, he hits the floor, hits the ground. Is there any way of protecting yourself against this? I saw, it looked like they had a little garment mask on their face in Mexico. How do you protect yourself? Because I even heard rumors that, even to the touch, you can be infected by touching it. What protection do we have as people who might be first responders or somebody that's a good Samaritan trying to help to make sure that you're protecting yourself in those cases?
Sure. So I guess if you were to inhale fentanyl powder that's in the air, sure, that could cause something like this. You're not going to have that type of effect from being in close proximity to fentanyl, and you're not going to have that type of reaction if it were to get on your skin unless you have a large open wound or something like that, somewhere that it could absorb. And even then, it would have to be a pretty large amount to absorb through an open wound. So I guess the only situation where I could see this occurring would be truly that, there's a powder that gets, up into the air and you happen to inhale it. So,
hopefully there's going to be some Narcan close by in the close proximity. I've heard a lot of discussions, especially with law enforcement, the narcotic agents that, deal with it every day and going in, searching and seizing. But it would have to, now the carfentanil, if you were to come up on it, that might be a different deal. But nobody knows what the product is, right, unfortunately.
And we use these as medications as well. So, fentanyl is routinely drawn up by nurses and administered to patients every day in the ER and every day in the hospital. It's a dose difference, of course, in a controlled environment, but it's not like, a nurse holding a syringe of fentanyl or drawing it up and it's not.
Does that include even down to what Ms. Croson said in regards to?
Carfentanil and sufentanil are used in the anesthesia world, actually. Okay. So these are.
That would even include the horse tranquilizer, whatever that was.
We don't use like xylazine or anything like that. It's really rare to use things like carfentanil, but they can be used. It's rare that they're used. So, but.
Okay, this is Wanda Gilbert again from the Army Substance Abuse Program. I heard a lot of questions about law enforcement, and today we don't have anybody on the panel from law enforcement, but those who are listening online who had those questions or those who are present today, you can go to the Drug Enforcement Administration website, and they have a lot of answers to those questions that you guys were asking. They have a lot of statistics on that website. You were asking how prevalent it was amongst the nation. Those statistics are on their website. They also have information videos that you can watch and get more information if you didn't get your answers particularly answered today, or your questions answered today. They also have links to resources, and they have a campaign called One Pill Can Kill. And so those are just added resources for you. Also, if you are on an installation, you should be able to get in contact with your Army Substance Abuse Program or your Employee Assistance Program to get more information or resources. I'm hearing people saying they have kids in school. You're looking for resources. You call, you get on the website, you go pop up and visit and get information that is for your local area. They were talking about you can get in contact with the mental health programs in your community, right? Well, how do I know who they are, right? It's hard to find those things. They are programs embedded in your organization that seek that information for you so you don't have to dig it up and find it. So we're going to tell you some quick, dirty ways, or not dirty, but some quick ways to get some of that information is call your EAP. Call your ASAP. You can even call your medical facility on your installation. That is your behavioral health on your installation, and they can help get you in contact with some of those resources. They can link you to your community as well. You might even can give your DES a call on your installation and say, hey, I'm trying to get linked up to resources. Can you help me out? Thank you. I'm going to pass it over. We have another question from the audience.
Yes, Ms. Croson was speaking earlier about trank dope, where they mix the xylazine, the fentanyl into a carrier drug such as cocaine or heroin, and that has been spreading rapidly, originally from Puerto Rico up into Philadelphia, and then to last I checked, it was 40 states in the U.S. Are you guys starting to see that propagate in this area as well?
We've had one related death from it. It was a co-use with the xylazine and fentanyl mixed together. But we do keep an eye out for it, for all the toxicology coming back to see about these new trends and how they emerge and if it's going to move into here. But as of yet, we've had very limited cases of such with just one death thus far. But that definitely could be a different story 6 months from now as we get more of our lab work back to take a look back at the previous dates.
So I have a question. So kind of regard to your statement of how do we stop it from coming, we have a supply and demand issue here. There's always going to be a demand for it. Prevention, we do our best with prevention because that is going to be the component that helps drive down that demand. We can have laws, but as long as we have that demand, there's always going to be folks that are looking for it. So my question goes to prevention. To Ms. Yanko and Mr. Wilkinson particularly, can you kind of give us an idea of addictions, how our brains are responding to addictions? Because I think sometimes we get a misguided kind of understanding about addictions and why it's so hard to combat it. So that part of it. And then two, what would be some ways for us to be mindful of red flags, that this might be becoming an issue? Red flags for family members who might have folks that they're concerned about who might be on the risk factors for addictions.
All right. Yeah, so as far as some of the risk factors, there's isolation. And some of that with teenagers is pretty normal behavior, but if there seems to be some additional isolation and, rebelliousness, secretiveness, hiding, some of those can be red flags, of course, for use. And did you have any?
Okay. It's an easy question, but it's complicated at the same. I mean, addiction in and of itself is a brain disease. So it just acts on that, reward circuitry that we just come born naturally with. Human beings being who they are, we tend to want to keep doing things that make us feel good and not do the things that make us feel bad. Contrary to popular belief, majority of the people who are out there using drugs do not want to use drugs. They don't want to get high. They use because they have to, not because they want to. Addiction is not something that is intentional. It's something that's accidental. So usually it sets in once the person realizes that the drug that they're using serves another purpose or problem that they're having. And over a course of time, whatever that problem is forgotten, and all they have now is just this constant repetitive cycle of using substances. So, treatment goal is to, reintroduce that person to the role that drugs serve in their life. Why am I actually doing that? And then begin to address that issue. So we have to begin to look at drug use as, self-medication of a problem that is unidentified. So we identify that problem, we treat it. Prevention being what it is, it's just education. How is this thing going to start? This is what you're going to see, if you begin to use drugs. If you're using drugs and this is happening to you, this is what you do next to help yourself. So, and I don't think there is any age-specific bracket where that should start. Now what we're seeing even children in our elementary age that are beginning to start to use drugs. So it's necessary to get that information out there as quick as possible.
How much of the drug addiction issue can we contribute to it starting out being a therapeutic treatment and then it turning into an addiction?
I can take the first part of that. In 1996, Purdue said that OxyContin wasn't addictive and marketed it like crazy. And that's where the prescription addiction really got off the ground. And you have this whole cadre of people that became addicted to prescription drugs. And then we started putting in laws that prevented some of those prescriptions being so easy to get. The pill mills where doctors were just writing and rescheduling some of them and cracking down with how much insurance would pay. So then the prescription drugs on the street became more expensive than heroin. And that's when you saw heroin be kind of the phase 2 of drug addiction, because they switched to that. And then we're in that third wave now with fentanyl. But a lot of it started in 1996 with OxyContin by Purdue. Does that answer your question?
Any more questions from the audience?
The teams. Where? Is there a list of successful best addiction treatment centers in the U.S.?
Well, I don't think you can rank who's better than the next person. There is no one size, fits all, component to treatment. I think what an individual really has to do is find the treatment center that literally or figuratively is near them, and get engaged with treatment, go through treatment, and do the best they can to apply the teachings that they're being taught. Usually, if a person, well, I'll backtrack. If a person is looking for a treatment center, what you really want to look for is a treatment center that has licensed and/or qualified professionals that are tasked with providing that treatment. You know, contrary to popular belief, every treatment center that you go to may not have those professionals there. So the most important thing when a person is seeking treatment is to make sure that the treatment center that they're seeking out has licensed professionals there that are trained to deal with their particular issue. Mm-hmm.
And then the last question I have from Teams is, are any of these drugs made to look like candy in order to be more desirable to children?
Be made to look like whatever, right? But yeah, I don't think that there's.
There was that little flare up of rainbow fentanyl where it looked like sweet tarts, but
Yeah.
I think that may have been just
I
a
almost think
flash in the
think it's
pan.
branding too, you know. So, but.
That's really more of a law enforcement question, because there are some people that, you know, just local pill mills that can fix them to make them look whatever, but that's really up to the local law enforcement can address that better.
Question that Carl was answering, long-term treatment is going to be necessary. When a person becomes addicted, it changes the receptors, the dopamine receptors in the brain, and it will take a minimum of 18 months of abstinence for those to start normalizing. So it's got to be a long-term journey.
I think we have time for one more question.
I think that concludes our questions here.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we will have our closing remarks.
All right, that was a great discussion. Thank you, panelists. At this time, I want to introduce to you the Director of Human Resources here at Redstone Arsenal at United States Army Garrison, Ms. Linda Mosley. She is going to give our closing remarks and our acknowledgements.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Linda Mosley, the Director of Human Resources. And on behalf of the Garrison Commander, Colonel Cozine, he would like to have been here today, the Deputy Garrison Commander, Martin Traylor, and Sergeant Major LeMasters. They want to thank all of you, and especially the panel in today's program, for addressing the grave dangers of fentanyl. We'd like to say, as we've heard today, fentanyl is roughly 100 times more potent than morphine and 50 times more potent than heroin. In fact, it is the most potent opiate pain reliever available for use in medical treatment, according to the CDC. Although healthcare professionals consider fentanyl safe and effective, when a person uses it in a monitored medical setting, the drug still carries a high potential for misuse, also known as abuse, which was addressed here today by the panel. As fentanyl is much more potent than heroin, there is also a hugely increased risk of overdose and death. These and other insights shared today have been eye-opening, especially the stories shared by those members of the audiences. We thank you, sir, reminding us of the urgent necessity to comfort this perilous threat directly. The statistics and real-life stories discussed serve as a stark reminder of the devastating impact it has on our communities. With knowledge comes power, and we cannot stop here. We are required to maintain the conversation beyond this program today. We are required to make a difference. Share what you have learned from these esteemed guests. Educate others about the risks of fentanyl misuse and addiction. Our collective effort can make a difference in our community and across the nation. We'd like to thank our esteemed guests from the Partnership for a Drug-Free Community for leading today's discussions and sharing local information, assisting us to better define dangers in our local footprint. Your valuable contributions have been instrumental in bringing awareness to our military community and hopefully will empower all of us to take action. First, we'd like to thank Carl Wilkerson, the panel, and open discussion moderator. Ms. Borman and Ms. Gilbert will present him with the award. On behalf of the Garrison team, we thank you for your work and contributions. Thank you, sir. Karen Krausen, the pharmacist, your discussion today was very innovative, ma'am. Thank you so much. We'll get to it. Thank you. Mr. Webster, the Relations Officer from Huntsville Emergency Medical Service. Thank you so much, sir. I listened very carefully. Thank you. And thank you for what your team does. Dr. Barry Hill, thank you so very much, sir. What a difficult challenge you have, and you lead that so greatly. Dr. Neuberger, the medical director from Huntsville Hospital, thank you. Can only imagine every day how many patients you see and the difference you make in the lives that you touch. We'd like to especially extend a special thank you to our installation partners who make a significant difference. Ms. Ryan Yanko, the substance abuse disorder counselor from Fox Army Healthcare Center. And what a great job Fox does every day in supporting us and working together for prevention. Thank you, ma'am. And now, a special thank you. Behind every great program are people who make a difference. So we know the Army Substance Abuse Program, Ms. Gilbert leads the charge every day to make sure awareness is available in our communities. But behind that is Ms. Borman. Ms. Borman, come forward. I'd like to give her a purple orchid. When we talk about symbolism, it means making a difference, health, and happiness. And what a great challenge she does as a leader in our community, and we are so lucky to have her as a part of our team. Thank you so much. Again, on behalf of Colonel Cozine and the command team, I say thank you to Army Substance Abuse, this panel of esteemed guests, and everyone for making a difference in our community. Thank you for attending today, in person and virtually.
Again, I'd like to thank everybody for your time, the support of my director, Ms. Wanda Gilbert. The panelists, you guys were amazing, some tough questions. Next time we'll need to have some law enforcement here. So thank you for participating. We enjoyed having you, and keep those discussions going in your homes, with your neighbors, with your friends, with your family. Only we can tackle this epidemic, and it takes all of us. It takes a community. So thank you for your support, and have a great day.
And those of you who are trying to get credit for substance abuse training, we cannot forget that. There is a survey up here. There's a scan code. If you have your phone, scan it, complete the survey. Okay, the survey is going to ask you some questions, and then it's going to get your email. If you want a certificate, that's how we can get it back to you. We also need your feedback. How did this event go? How was the delivery and the presentation? Was the information relevant? Let us know. We want to get information to you, right, to our community. We want to make sure that you're hearing and digesting things that are going to make you better people and your families have better quality of lives. So that's the end. I just wanted to add that. And again, thank you, Michelle, for putting this together. And thank you, Partnership for a Drug-Free Community.